Alrighty, welcome everyone back to the AM 1150 Garden Show. Ken Salvail here, and Don Burnett is away today, but we're still answering gardening questions and continuing on as normal. And we have Dan Bruce on the line. Dan, just hang in there. And we're going to go to Sandy, I believe. Sandy, you're on the line there?
Hi, yep, I'm here.
Hi, Sandy. How are you today?
Oh, not too bad.
Good.
A little put out, but that's winter always hits me that way.
Yeah.
I usually save my bean seeds to plant again, but I usually pick the pods when they're brown.
Right.
This time they haven't gone brown.
Right.
Are they going to be viable to grow, or should I husk them and eat them?
I think they should be fine either way. Maybe, Dan, do you have any suggestions on that? I don't know.
Because they haven't dried and gone brown yet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, what I do is, as long as the seed is mature enough, like as long as the seed has, come through to its maturity. So even in a green pod, I just pick all the pods and I leave them in the pods and then let them dry in the pods.
Okay.
And then the pod dries up, goes brown, and starts to crack off. And then I'm able to collect those beans and tag them appropriately. And I typically would store them in a paper bag normally. And that's generally the way to go.
Okay. Because I didn't know whether they would grow again or whether I would just have a row of nothing.
No, but I would, store them in the refrigerator is what we've done in the past. We used to have all of our vegetable seeds stored in just a regular fridge at that about 4 or 5 degrees Celsius is perfect. Yeah, and you're good to go for next year.
All right, we'll try it.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Andy. Take care. Bye-bye. All righty, so I believe we have Dan back on the line there. Hey, Dan, you're there?
Yes, I got back on.
All right. That's awesome. So, Dan, tell me a little bit about the robins. I noticed that there are robins in the area that are staying. Do they actually leave or do they stay? What do they do?
Well, I think with robins, the majority of them do head to warmer areas, but some certainly do stay around. I've seen robins here every month of the year. Last year they would have had a tough time because one of the things that they do go for is mountain ash berries. And last year there were none, at least not in my area.
Right.
Whereas this year there's a massive crop. But as a general rule, I think it's not food supply that the birds, that migratory birds are concerned with. It's daylight length.
Oh.
And they are told by the sun when to go.
Right.
Yesterday, in the middle of the snow, and my tree shaking rituals, there was an Anna's hummingbird at the feeder. There's got to be, I think there are probably 2 individuals here. They're not visible all the time, but the level of syrup in the feeder is going down, so I think it must be them that's doing it.
Yeah, so with those, I know the birds are smart enough, I guess, to know when to come or when to go. But
yes.
They, like tonight, like they don't have the ability to do a forecast, but the forecast tonight is -10. They will find a place to hide. Is that they just find a place and buckle?
Yes.
Hunker down?
Birds are equipped with feathers, and no matter what technology can do, humans have never created anything as efficient as feathers for insulation.
Wow.
Because the feather covering can be tightened up to exclude air, which of course will be cooler for the body, or they can be fluffed out to include air, which acts as insulation.
Right.
So you get birds in very, very, very cold conditions, like emperor penguins in Antarctica.
Yeah.
They are in something like minus 100.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculously cold.
Mm-hmm.
And they're fine. They've been there for millennia, incubating their eggs and minding their own business. And up in, Prince George and northern BC, which is nothing like Antarctica, you still get chickadees in the wintertime. Totally insulated and able to deal with it.
Interesting. Well, we're going to come back to that topic. Again, it's awesome having you on the line so we can ask you some of these questions about birds, because birds are such a big part of the garden, and I'm sure we all appreciate that. We've got a caller on the line, though, we'll go to right now. We have Irene on the phone. Good morning, Irene.
Yes, I have a question for you. My daughter has picked up some peach pits or peach stones that she threw in the garden, and they started to grow. Now, she saved one of these, and will these develop into a good peach tree or not?
No. Go ahead, Dan.
Sorry?
You can answer if you like.
Well, I was leaving that in your expert hands, but my response would be that fruit varieties in general do not come true from seed. You need to be getting those from vegetative propagation.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what I wanted to know.
If you plant the seed of a Granny Smith apple, you'll get an apple tree, but whether it'll be any good or not is
a question.
It's up in the air. Occasionally, of course, you can be surprised and get something that is really significant.
And this is
most of the time, it'll be just a small crab apple or something.
Oh, I see. And this is true for peaches too.
I think this applies right across the board to fruit varieties.
Oh, I see. Well, thank you very much. That's what I wanted to know.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for calling, Irene.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, so that's the thing with these fruit trees, and particularly with peaches, is that the seeds are grown as seedlings, and they'll grow literally thousands and thousands of them, and they'll plant them out into the fields, and they'll grow them till they're about a foot high or maybe 18 inches high, sometimes even 2 feet high, depending how vigorous they are. And then in August, they'll come in and they'll find a really good variety, like Red Haven peach or whatever the variety is, and they'll graft one of these buds. It's called bud grafting in the month of August. And they graft it, and then the graft then grows and becomes the new peach tree. And that's how basically all of peaches and apples and other things are grown. They're grafted onto seedlings. And this is just an interesting way. And as you say, Dan, it's a method of vegetative propagation, but it's just the way that the industry goes, and it really works. That way you know for sure what you're getting. You're getting a proper variety instead of taking the chance. But like you say, Dan, sometimes you luck out. That's how some of these really good varieties are found. But I think it's like winning a lottery almost.
It is, and you can't predict it. If you're lucky, you're lucky. If you're not, well, you've got a big bush that's
it's almost useless. Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny with peaches. I find a lot of times you get these little hard peaches that come from them, because I've seen lots of the peaches come from seed that just show up in the ditches and whatnot, and occasionally they're pretty nice, but a lot of times they're just a little hard fruit that's not really useful.
I mean, driving around in the Okanagan, you can see many, many cases of apple trees growing in the ditches and off the side of the road. Well, that is the result of people winging an apple core out.
Yeah.
Which is okay. The bear population really think it's a cool thing.
Yeah, they've got some food supply. Yeah. And on a negative point, the cherries, which are the birds, I believe they'll eat those cherries, and then they transfer the pits all throughout the valley, and those pits are dropped, and then, of course, they grow into being enormous, gigantic trees, and they're growing in the ditches everywhere.
Yeah.
And, of course, they breed some of the bad insects and things that affect the cherry crops. So we often mention on this program that if you have fruit trees and you're unable to take care of them, generally the rule is to get rid of them, because it's one of those things that, all you do sometimes is promote a bunch of disease and insect issues. So the local orchardists they're always fighting against these issues, and having somebody neglecting trees nearby certainly doesn't help the situation. Okay, Dan, we're going to take a quick break here. So we do, again, invite your calls, 862-2525 to get through to us today. That's 250-862-2525. And we'll be back right after these messages with more AM 1150 Garden Show. Alrighty, welcome back to the show. It is a little bit of a snowy day out there. It certainly looks beautiful, but that's probably where it ends. It's kind of sloppy right now. It's going to be cold tonight, so we got to be ready for that. And just with that in mind, there's going to be a lot of broken branches out there, and there are some techniques that are helpful in putting the plants and things back together after a heavy wet snow, but often that often it doesn't work. So sometimes those branches just need to be cut off and removed and allow the tree to regrow. And there's not really much else we can do about that, unfortunately. So, but it does help. Sometimes we'll have people will send us, pictures of what they have and the problems that they're having. And some of the bad breaks, if there sometimes are opportunities to brace up a tree and then potentially bolt it back together or put in cables. A professional arborist can cable certain trees to help to hold them up, but it's a specialty thing, and you're generally wise to leave it up to somebody who's experienced at that. So, Dan, you're still with me?
Yes, I'm still with you.
Cool.
And I was interested in your comment about cabling the trees, because on the front lawn at the Manor House at Fintry is a very large and old Douglas fir. Years and years and years ago, it broke off at about 20 feet, and then it sent out laterals with each one having new vertical growth. So that caused some problems maybe 5 or 6 years ago with those laterals breaking. And BC Parks wanted to cut the whole thing down as a dangerous tree, and I persuaded them not to, and Cody Tree Services came to the rescue, and they cabled the whole thing together so that it is, instead of having several different trees, as it were, attached to the same trunk, the whole thing is now one unit, cohesive.
Right.
So it has stood through wind and excessive storms and heavy snowfall. The tree is fine.
Well, that's great. That's the thing, is when you have a mature, even just if it's just the base of the tree, you have that massive root system that's pushing up energy, and generally the trees will respond quite quickly, much faster than, say, putting in a new tree. But having somebody who knows what they're doing is key, because of that. There's some dangerous aspects to that. Also, whenever a branch, say, grows off of a tree that's sort of a side shoot, or it's shooting up because the tree was, say, topped. We were talking about topping trees earlier and why not to top them. And one of the main reasons is that a branch that grows naturally from a trunk is anchored quite deep inside the center of the tree. And just like if you ever split firewood and you see that big knot going right into the center of the tree, it's always a pain when you're chopping wood because you have to fight your way through it. But it's one of these things that tells you how well anchored that branch is just by looking at that big knot. But when you find a tree that's been broken off and then it regrows from the side, it tends to start just right under the bark. And it doesn't have that big, strong attachment point. But that's, again, why you need to have professionals involved to do this kind of thing, to make sure that they're taking all these things in consideration when they do cabling or whatever, bolting or whatever is involved. All right. So, Dan, I got another question for you about birds, just because I know when I have you, I don't always get the chance when you're on. Don always hits you with his questions, but I always have my list. But I really enjoy the cedar waxwings when they come around in the wintertime, and they come in these flocks, and they will just completely eliminate berries from a plant like unbelievably quickly. And my yew tree, I've got a columnar yew, like I think it's the similar variety that you have, and that thing was just covered in berries. And then all of a sudden, I heard this ruckus, and an entire flock of cedar waxwings came in and attacked that tree, and I think they took them all.
Well, that is how the waxwings operate. You're out there doing your thing, and you hear what it could be described as a low roar.
Yeah,
it's exactly. The whirring of wings, and they fly as a cohesive unit, hundreds of birds all together, and it's amazing how they can suddenly switch direction all at the same time and not end up in a tangled mess all over the ground. Yeah. But they will come down on a berry-bearing plant and feast for about 10-15 minutes, and then they're gone again.
Right. Do they they like the mountain ash as well, or?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
They'll take any berry. There's a black-fruited cotoneaster here in the garden that, for some reason, they don't like. I couldn't tell you why. I've never tasted it myself.
Is it a taste thing, or are they just toxic? That's a good question.
I don't know.
They don't like it.
They don't like it. But yes, yew, mountain ash.
Do you think they would do the hawthorns?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They're less sort of keen on hawthorn as they are on the mountain ash, but they'll take a wide variety of berries that may be available.
Very cool.
My upright yew, Irish yew, does not it's not one of the berry producing ones.
Oh, okay.
So I don't get them on there, but there's a yew on the other side of the house that does produce. So, and this year again, it's loaded.
Yeah. So cedar waxwing should have a good diet for this year. But when do they come through? Have they already come and gone, or are they?
They can come through pretty much any time. I think.
Oh, okay.
I've had them here in the dead of winter.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing with the birds, I guess. And some of them just take off, and other ones, some are on a schedule, and some are just free floating.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, well, we'll talk a little bit. I've got a few things on my list here to chat about today, and again, we do invite your calls, 862-2525, to get through to us. And the one thing is this overwintering of pests and diseases. And, there's going to be a lot of damage out there from the snow, but this is also an opportunity to remove fruits from your fruit trees that might have been missed. And this is something that the orchardists recommend, is that especially any soft fruits, like apricots are really one of these things that tend to stick on the tree. But they form these things they call mummies. And a mummy is a fruit that's completely molded out, and it just becomes this brown blob of disease. And that's often how the diseases overwinter. So what we do in the garden is anytime you go out into the garden, you would, especially once the leaves finally fall off, you go through and inspect all your trees, and you look for those fruits that might be still hanging around. Ones that you might have missed during your harvest. Again, it's recommended if you have fruit trees, when it's harvest time, you go and just get them all off the tree. Good, bad, or in between, they all should go. And then what that does is, again, it reduces the diseases from overwintering on that fruit that's hanging in the tree. And it also reduces some insects that might be associated with those particular fruits, or might even overwinter there. Most of the fruiting insects will drop to the ground and either overwinter in the earth itself underneath the tree, or actually in the bark on the tree. Like the codling moth larva from the apple trees is one that's commonly a problem or could be an issue. And so with the apple group. Other things with diseases that overwinter on the trees is when the trees go into the winter, they start to, or at least a lot of these diseases are actually on the skin or on the bark of the trees, and often in the leaves themselves. So underneath the trees, we want to get through and get that all raked up and cleaned up in the fall, get them out, get them into the compost. And then if you can, the copper spray is what's recommended once the trees have completely defoliated. And you can do a treatment in the fall, and that will coat the outer part of the tree. And the copper will act as a fungicide and actually a little bit of a bactericide in a way. It does prevent a lot of diseases from attacking trees, in particular the soft fruit trees. And you can give them a spray of that, and that will help to protect the trees through the wintertime. And then in the spring, you go back to your regular spray schedule, which again involves a fungicide in the spring, which is typically that lime sulfur dormant oil application, which is applied in the springtime. So it's just really wise to be aware of the fruit trees that you have. Like I said earlier, is that when you do get to towards the end of the season, you want to just make sure that you're picking all the fruit off the trees. And if you have a fruit tree that you just don't use, and if you're able to give it to somebody, you can say, hey, do you want this fruit? Let somebody take advantage of it. But make sure they take it all. If it's ripe and ready, just get it all off the tree. You can make that one of the conditions. Hey, you can have all these plums, but you got to take them all. And that'll really, really help keep the yard clean and help to prevent diseases from overwintering on the tree. So copper sprays in the fall on soft fruits, that's what's recommended. During cold weather like we're having, there's no point in doing anything through the cold weather. But anytime when it starts to warm up here in the next week or two, if we get a day that's reasonably nice and it's up to about 10 degrees Celsius, that's the perfect temperature where you can actually get out and do an application, and it'll certainly help get through. Again, if you have trees that you're not using, might be an idea to just remove them and move on to something else, maybe a nice magnolia, which do very well here in the valley. All right, do we need another break, John? Yeah, we do. Okay, so we're going to take another short break. And again, we do invite your calls, 250-862-2525, and we'll be back right after these messages with more AM 1150 Garden Show. Alrighty, welcome back to the AM 1150 Garden Show. Ken Salvail here today, and Don Burnett is potentially on the phone right now.
Morning,
Good morning.
Ken.
Hey, Don, how you doing there?
Excellent. Walking down Main Street, Vancouver on a beautiful sunny day, and guess what I just passed by? A rhododendron in bloom.
There you go.
No kidding.
There you
go. A rhododendron in bloom. What's it, upside down or something?
Well, that's a question for Dan. We've got Dan Bruce on the line here too, and he knows actually probably quite a bit about strange blooming times.
Well, yeah, I'll send Dan a picture at some point. But just to let you know, we got over the highway. We didn't take the Coquihalla to Vancouver. We took the Hope Princeton. It was a nice drive because haven't done that for many, many years, and we enjoyed it. Except it was bit hair raising, and I have no hair to raise, so it was a couple of vehicles spun out in front of us, and one went right across the road into the other lane, but no cars were coming, fortunately. The roads were pretty rough, but it wasn't snowing heavily, so I just, took it easy. It reminded me of our old trips to Vancouver to pick up flowers, Ken.
Yeah, the good old days.
Yeah, it was good. And, the city is the city. And we're staying with my son, and Dawn and I are just up right now. We're beautiful Saturday morning, sunny and cool, and we're bundled up, and we're going to go and find a place to grab a bit of food. So
there you go.
I just thought I'd phone in and thank you and Dan for being there, and say hello to everybody. Yeah, we're going to head out to Van Dusen Gardens at noon. So. Oh,
fabulous. Yeah. I guess they've got their night light show as well, I hear, that's going to be ramping up here towards Halloween.
Oh, yeah. I heard about that, too. Right.
Yep, that's worth it once it's dark.
Especially. Yeah, you betcha.
Cool. That's great, Dan, or Don. That's fabulous. Yeah. I appreciate you calling in. And it's not snowing there then?
It's not snowing, and it hadn't snowed, but it's actually a little frosty this morning. It's about, just maybe -1 or something.
Right.
And I hear it's going to get a little chilly. I'm a little concerned about my greenhouse, but I got Don Stoltz and my daughter Lindsay checking in on it, making sure that the heat's still on. And,
yep.
Yeah.
Yep, -10 tonight or something, so that'll be exciting.
Yeah. Well, I put my banana to bed. Banana's all asleep, and the fig, I'll let the leaves fall off it before I put it to bed. And
yep.
The dolly is frozen back now, so it can go to bed pretty quick. But everything else is, we're in business.
Fabulous. Yeah. Okay, Don.
Yeah, you betcha. And we'll see you next week.
You betcha. Thanks for calling in.
Take care.
All right.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye. There you go. And so, Dan, you're still on the line there?
Yes, but I'll have to go here pretty quick.
Yeah, so just that last thing about rhododendrons. I remember talking with your dad about it, and he was quite the rhododendron guy. Like, what can you tell me? Like, he used to say, did he not say that he had rhododendrons that bloomed in almost every month of the year?
Well, yes. Rhododendrons are from Eastern Asia, mostly Southeast Asia, Eastern Asia. They come from a wide variety of habitats, from sort of almost Arctic, high up in the Himalaya mountains, right down into tropical rainforest. The Milesian rhododendrons, which in some cases almost grow like orchids. They're epiphytic.
Wow.
But so that means that these things bloom at different times under different conditions. So, the fact that Don has seen one in Vancouver in bloom now is not impossible. Mm-hmm. Unusual, but not impossible. You should just check and make sure it's not plastic, though.
Yeah. I thought I remember your dad saying one time, he said, the hardest month to find one to bloom was November.
Well, November it's just a no month.
Right.
But rhododendrons, almost every one of them require acid soil conditions and high humidity. Yeah. Which we do not have in the Okanagan.
Right.
I know there are some individual rhododendron plants around that are doing very well, but they're the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, there's a few that are known to be slightly more resistant to the alkaline soil conditions, right?
Yeah.
But even those, I just find the vigorous ones, the sort of the old-fashioned or the common ones you find in the trade actually do the best because they're more vigorous, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate you calling in today. That's great. It was really nice to have a bird chat with you.
Well, it's always good to be here. It's good to know that Don survived the highways to the coast.
Yeah.
I was concerned for him yesterday because I knew he was going. But all is well, so I suppose we will see you during the week, or if not, then we'll talk again next week.
Sounds great, Dan. All right.
Okay.
Thanks very much for calling in.
You're welcome.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There you go. That was Dan Bruce of Speedwell Bird Sanctuary and also of Fintry fame. He's been managing and developing that Fintry, I guess it's a heritage site, and just fascinating all the history of that as well. So it's great to have him calling in. He's just a wealth of knowledge. And I'd say in the future, if anybody has questions about history or anything to do that would be, history sort of related, whenever he's on the phone, that's a good chance to phone in and ask him a question. He just happens to be a bird guy as well, so he's a fabulous wealth of knowledge. All right, so there you go. That's the first part of the show. We're going to be talking again about some of the overwintering insects and things that happen after the break here. Again, we do invite your calls, 250-862-2525. And we'll take a short break here for the news, and we'll be back just shortly with more AM 1150 Garden Show. righty, welcome back to the show, everyone. Ken Salvail here again today. And, I just wanted to mention to people that if you are interested in the gardening tips and videos and that sort of thing, that you can always check growercoach.com and check our YouTube channel as well. You know, YouTube is a really good way to get some great information on gardening. And Grower Coach on YouTube, we have we're getting more and more videos all the time. But we're gonna have a whole raft of new ones coming up. And so if you can get on there and just sign up for the program, you can just click the subscribe button, and that gets you into the regular subscription. And then as I update those videos, you'll be getting those coming on a regular basis. And if you like them, obviously, click the like button. That's always good, and you can comment. In the past, we've had videos on for at least the last, I would say, 12 or so years, 10 or 12 years, and so. Over that time, I haven't been spending much time paying attention to those videos. We were loading them up from time to time, but now we're actually getting on the bandwagon here, and we're definitely going to be getting on top of those videos and making it more of a regular thing. So, just want to mention that. So, just go to Grower Coach at YouTube and check out the videos there, and please subscribe. It's really a help to us as a group. So there you go. That's another tip. And we have a caller on the line. We have Bob on the line. Good morning, Bob.
Oh, hi, Ken.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Ken. I have a question here about some beautiful strawberry plants. They're ever-bearing. They're full of green berries and flowers.
Right.
Sadly, we got kicked out of our garden area, so... We brought these things in. Now, can we overwinter them in the house or on the deck or what?
Probably better on the deck. You know, the strawberry plant itself is extremely hardy for winter and cold temperatures. So it'll survive the cold very well. I would definitely get rid of the fruit, though. Oh. Any fruit that's on it. Unless there's a way you could try ripening some of them. They don't generally ripen once you pick them.
Would they ripen if they're just brought in the house, the whole plant?
It's a real finicky thing. It's a funny thing with strawberries. They like the cold temperatures, but they're subject to botrytis, and that's where they go moldy. And then when you bring them indoors, it's too warm for them, and it gives them a real shock. And then it's just not really a good thing. They're starting to go dormant now. So what I'd be doing is I'd pick all the fruit off them so it doesn't go moldy. And then I'd literally just keep them in pots or containers, keep them watered. I'd put them outside if they can get some snow on them for this cold snap tonight. Like, this is a pretty snappy temperature.
I can cover them, though, with a towel or something. And they're going to be on the deck then. Oh, good.
Yeah, and put them up against the house wall just for tonight. Put a little bit of blankets or something around to give them a little insulation. If they can get through tonight, tomorrow night they're saying -5 or so, so that's not too bad. But -10 tonight, that's a hard snap.
Okay, now they have runners on and beautiful big leaves. Do I have to cut all that stuff off?
No, I would just leave them as is for now and let them deal with their leaves. They will shed them eventually. Okay. But what will happen is if you can keep those plants attached through the winter, then in the springtime you can take those little babies off and start them new. Yeah. And they'll produce right away.
Okay. Now, this is weird. This plant has red flowers on it.
Okay. Well, it could be an interesting variety. So, Fragaria is a variety of that's strawberries. That's a family, and many of them do have red, pink, or white flowers. Okay. The common fruiting ones will have white flowers, but there are some varieties that have red and or pink flowers.
Yeah, this has both. So.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Wow. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, then.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Good.
Ken. Bye.
Good luck. Bye-bye. Yeah, so it's always interesting, the different types of plants, and outdoor plants like to stay outdoors, and indoor plants want to be indoors, and then there's this time when I think sometimes we feel sorry for them or whatever. But the outdoor ones really don't like to come in. Like I have a garage sometimes that's partially heated, but it stays pretty cold. It's really just almost like a refrigerator. And the plants, those outdoor plants, can be protected in an unheated garage just to get through a cold snap like this. And then once the weather goes back to normal, then they can go back outside and again kind of adapt to the temperatures just as they come. Just as another note, we were talking earlier about irrigation, and we do know that irrigation is an issue right now. It will be tonight because of the cold temperatures. So if anybody has an irrigation line and say they haven't been able to have it blown out yet, the stuff that's underground should be all right, especially with the snow on the ground, because that'll add some insulation. You never know. There could be some minor damage, but the thing we're more worried about is just anything that's above ground, and especially that you have an irrigation shutoff that's inside the house that would shut off the water that goes out through the wall and then goes down into the ground outside. And so you want to make sure those are shut off on the inside so that if a pipe does break, it's not going to flood. And then on the outside of the house, if it's one of these things, like you can put some insulation over that connection. That's called your source connection, is right where it goes through the wall. So you can put some insulation around that to help to buffer the cold for tonight and possibly even tomorrow night. They say about -5, -6 tomorrow night. So you want to protect it even tomorrow night. But the other thing you could do is, in the case of, if you're really concerned about it, you could use a little bit of heat tape that you can pick up at the hardware store and just plug that in again, just at nighttime. And again, I would still put insulation around it, but the heat tape will do the job and prevent those from freezing up in the next day or so. And just protect those fittings. Again, with hoses, if you have hoses that are attached to outlets on your house, get those just disconnected. That's all you really have to do is unscrew them, just because that is something that can cause damage. When it goes beyond -10, it's possible that if there's water, when a hose is attached, often there's still water sitting right there in that tap, and that water can freeze and break a pipe inside the wall, which can cause some major damage and actually flood inside the house. So, I always say, take your hoses off before it goes really cold. And it's at -10, -11. I know on some of the forecasts they said -12, depending where you live, right? If you're in Kelowna or in the Okanagan Valley and you live right beside the lake, you're probably going to be okay, because that lake warmth effect is going to help to really manage that really cold temperature, and it won't get as cold in those areas. But if you're up in the hills, or even in a frost pocket where the frost is actually trapped, that might be a situation where you're going to get some pretty severe temperatures, and you want to be careful of that. And people who do live up in the higher areas, you're up in the Zone 3, Zone 4 areas, you're already in winter, so you've already experienced this, so I don't think I have to tell you anything. But it's us. We sometimes, normal timing would be that normally we have the whole month of October to winterize our irrigation. And irrigation companies, they put you on a list. Often people say, leave me to the end, leave me right to the end of the month. And it's like, okay, but just remember, the end of the month, anything could happen once you're past about the 50. Well, you don't even know. Last year, what was it? It was about I think it was the 13th or 14th of October last year. The temperature dropped down to -12 or 13 or whatever it was. It was crazy cold just for 1 or 2 nights, and that was enough to cause quite a bit of damage. But it was out of the blue, and it was quite early. And then just the next week, it went back to normal, and it was like nothing happened other than all the damage that happened out there. So anyway, a little bit of damage here or there is not anything to really be too worried about, because those repairs are something that can be done, and it's not the end of the world. That's fixable. But what I don't want to see is, I don't want to see lines that are left on so that they actually have live water in them, and then that line breaks, and then all of a sudden you've got a flooding situation. And if nobody knows it's broken, it's out there spraying and flooding who knows what. And it can often flood your neighbor's house as well as your own. So one thing I would just suggest is just to be the good Samaritan right now, is if you do have friends or acquaintances that are elderly and they need somebody just to do a quick walk around the house, just to check the hoses and just to make sure things are set properly, I think that would be a really nice thing to do, is just to get out there And visit any of your friends that you feel that might need that little extra help, just to make sure that their hoses are detached and the irrigation system is at least shut off. And if it can be drained down a bit, like sometimes people have a tap that's maybe down at the bottom of a hill or something. And if you're at your house at the top of the hill, you could just open up a tap at the top and a tap at the bottom, and away it goes. The whole system would drain out, and you'd be good. So that's another thing that you can do. So let's all pitch in and help each other tonight. They're saying it could be minus 12 in some areas, and that's pretty cold. And so, let's just all pitch in. All right, so at this time of year, we're thinking about winter. It's hitting us right in the face right now, but in the next few days, next week, they're saying, +8, maybe even up to +10 on a couple days. And for us, that's pretty reasonable, more sort of back to normal temperatures. And in those conditions, there still might be the opportunity to get out and to remove fruit from fruit trees. We were talking about that. But remember that a lot of the insects that overwinter on trees, they're often living on a tree, or they live on a specific tree all summer long. And then in the fall, what they do is they go through this change where they all develop wings and they fly to a specific species of plant that they overwinter on. And there's a reason for that. Sometimes they're evergreens. So they'll transfer from one tree to another one. And sometimes you'll see that, the buildup of these little white fluffy guys on the bark or on the stems of plants, especially fir trees. You'll see that quite commonly. In some pines, you'll see that. But it's just something to be aware of, that's what happens, and that's all normal. I don't ever want to be just killing insects randomly. We always want to protect any living creatures on this planet, I think, deserve to be protected first. And so what you do is you learn about it before you do any reactions. And spraying is not something we do much of, but sometimes a preventative spray, like the dormant oil sprays that are done in the springtime, they're quite safe to use, and they don't have much toxicity, but they coat the tree, and any of these little overwintering insects that might be wedged in the bark or on the stems of the trees or approaching, say, the flower buds or something. When we do an application sometime around the end of March or early April, those dormant sprays, just as the leaves are just about to leaf out, that's a really good timing. And you can, again, apply that dormant oil spray, and that'll just kill some of the overwintering insects that are ready to jump out and attack those new leaves just as they leaf out. Many of you, or some of you, may have the viburnum trees, the snowball trees, and we hear every year, we get people that call in and they say, oh, my snowball tree, all the leaves are crinkled up, and there's something going on, and of course that's the aphids. And, how do they get on those leaves so quickly? It's like as soon as they leaf out, they're already a ball of aphids. And the reason is because the aphids are overwintering on the plant. And so they're just sitting there waiting for the bud to open. And as soon as that bud swells up and just cracks a little, they're right in there right away, and they get in where they're protected inside the layers of the leaves. And then, of course, they're set, and they start to feed, and that causes the whole leaf to become distorted, and it's a problem. So that's what, again, for the snowball bushes of viburnum group, those applications of dormant oil are really effective. You just have to get it just as those buds are just starting to swell a little bit, so that's probably the end of March timing. And get the dormant sprays on them, and you're good to go. It really helps to reduce that problem and get rid of those overwintering aphids and give you a nice-looking plant. All right, we're going to take another short break here, so we do invite your calls, 250-862-2525, if you have any gardening questions at all, and we'll be back right after these messages with more AM 1150 Garden Show. Welcome back to the show, everyone. And very, very interesting weather we're having, and that seems to be the topic here today. But there's all kinds of things that we talk about when we talk about gardening. I mean, saving seeds is one of the key things we're doing right now. And as I was mentioning earlier on the show, that sometimes just storing them in a like a dry paper bag, once they've actually achieved what they're going to achieve outside, those seeds can be collected and put into bags and kept just in your refrigerator in a small, again, paper bag is the ideal thing, because that just keeps your moisture under control. But in the refrigerator, it's just perfect temperature. 4 or 5 degrees Celsius is about right. And those seeds will come through the winter very nicely, and they'll be ready to go for the spring. So it's a really nice thing to do. The vegetable seeds, again, sometimes you'll have really good success with a lot of vegetables. It's just doing a little bit of research is helpful to find out if certain varieties will come true to seed, or will they just come up as something different. We find that with a lot of the squash family, that a lot of those, they don't generally come exactly, what you seed is not always what you get. You often get something that's a little bit different, or some sort of a blend. But when it comes to other plants like beans and things, they'll often come through true to type if you save those seeds. So they're good. Especially some of the old heritage varieties of tomatoes and things, a lot of those will come true to seed. But any of the hybrids, anything that's a hybridized variety, you'll find that when you do plant those seeds, they will likely come up as something different, so you can't always trust them. So finding a really good source, something that a company, let's say, that has a good source of seed is something that, that I'd say as a gardener, we want to lock down on somebody who's reliable and responsible and actually has some good quality products. And of course, we often go back to our friends at Stoke Seeds. They are people that do a really good job, and they have very high quality, and they track the varieties that they have. And we've had really good success with those particular seeds coming true to type. It's one of the issues sometimes when you buy plants is that even though you go to support a local garden center, absolutely just get out there and do it. It's an important part of the community, but there is sometimes when you're buying those plants, you never 100% know that there's not been some mix up of seeds or varieties. So we do our best to track those, and I've done tons of seeding. We used to do about around anywhere from 200,000 to 500,000 seedings every year. And I'll tell you, tracking variety was the key thing that we used to have to do. Was you just had to be really careful that when you're seeding certain trays that you don't, the seeds are not flying everywhere, they're not getting stuck on tools and getting transferred from flat to flat, or you have to keep those areas very isolated. So over the years of seeding so many plants that it's one of these things where you have a seeding area and you keep it clean, and you seed one variety at a time, and you carefully label everything, and you always have a backup label program. And ideally we used to attach the labels directly to the flats, and we'd have little sticky labels. Eventually we got to that point where we had sticky labels that would have a code, a barcode on it. And that was really, really helpful, because we were able to track those varieties and make sure that if we say this one's a pink petunia, or if it's a hybrid sedum seed of some sort, we want to make sure whatever that is, we're tracking it very carefully, so that when the finished product comes down the pipe, that we're supplying the clients or their customers with the best product possible. And so, that's the thing when it comes to plants and humans. Whenever humans become involved, there's room for error. But even with machines, at some point, we used to do a lot of seeding, and we actually had a large seeding machine that would work on a vacuum system, and it would suck up these tiny little seeds, and it would only select one seed per vacuum tube, and then it would suck up those seeds and drop them straight into the little trays just perfectly. And that machine was pretty good, again, as long as somebody's not mixing up the seeds or putting the wrong one in the wrong hole. So that does happen. So anyway, I always appreciate it when I can get some plants. I appreciate the garden centers and all the people in the plant industry that take so much time and care, and they try so hard to keep these things on track. It's not easy. There are thousands of different types of plants that they have to put together each year. And so again, there's always some things that can go wrong, but most times things go right and things are fabulous. So it's really nice to take advantage of that. People who do have the greenhouses to get things going a bit early so that when we go in, that we can buy those plants and get them into our gardens and enjoy them, at the right timing. One of the things that my specialty has been in a lot of different areas of growing plants, but particularly in the perennial plant production, which is the more like floral crops. And we used to grow about 3,500 different species of perennials, and they were always interesting because perennial plants are like wild plants. Most of them are not hybrids, and they're just natural plants. And so then, in order to get those seeds to germinate, or if they have to be done by cutting, which a lot of them are done by little cuttings, rooted cuttings, they're always tricky, and a lot of research has to be done on each one. So particularly with seeds, some varieties of plants are just so easy to grow from seed. You literally drop the seeds in the tray and up they come, and they're just excited and growing, and it's so easy. But other things can be a challenge. And I can remember over the years, it would seem like always the coolest plants are the real rare plants. Now I know why they're rare. They're rare because the seeds just don't germinate, or you get so few that germinate. I can remember having to buy seeds where we were paying upwards of $1 a seed, and you'd buy your 50 seeds or something, and they would come in and we would seed them and take extra care and read about them and do everything we're supposed to do to try to get them to germinate. We would only get 2 plants, 2 of those seeds to germinate. And then we'd baby those plants along, and they're just not super vigorous, and they would struggle a bit. And then we would get down to one of those plants would die, and so we'd end up with the one plant, and it would struggle, and we'd finally grow it into like a small pot. And then what's the value of that plant? It's just it's unfortunate that's what causes plants to just sort of disappear off of the out of the trade. And you think like, oh, gee, at some point, remember we used to be able to get those plants, now we can't get them anymore. And it's just because the people who knew how to grow those particular plants, there was secrets and tricks to getting them to grow. And, time goes on, they lose those tricks and techniques. And of course now they're just gone. And so really nice to be able to take vegetative cuttings from plants that are difficult to grow from seed, and or divisions where you actually take the root and take pieces of the plant, the root and the stem, and divide those and be able to put each of those into little pots. And sometimes that's the answer for a lot of these very difficult plants. That's really the way to go. So at this time of year, I know in fall cleanups, we often will take plants and divide them and move them around. In landscaping, it's one of these things to develop repetition in the garden. So we find these plants that might be particularly beautiful or particularly nice, or let's say a timing that is really nice. So in August is typically a month that's kind of hard to get certain plants to bloom. It's easy for annuals, but of course for the perennial plants in the garden, they're a little trickier to find those plants that do bloom. And so you might have one plant that blooms in August. And so it's great, it's beautiful, but it's just one plant. So in the fall, you can often go out and take those plants, divide the roots into chunks, and relocate them around the garden. And this gives you the repetition so that when those plants come on and bloom, it just lights up the whole yard instead of just having that one plant. So like I always say, is that little bit of repetition makes a big difference. And it's one of these things that I think when I start talking about bulbs, of course, fall bulbs, which right now is a great time to pick up some fall bulbs. I bet you're going to find some on sale now too. So get some fall bulbs and be ready as soon as this cold snap goes by, and get out there and get those into the ground. But same thing with bulbs is repetition. I'd rather buy a whole bunch of one color or one type rather than buying, about 10 different colors or 10 different types. They all come at different times, and, you're not really getting much of a show out of those. They're pretty for that one little bunch, but that's about it. So I'd rather go and spend my whole budget just on one variety every year and buy a whole bunch of double white tulips or double pinks or whatever your favorite color is. And I'd rather go big on one type and then get those all planted in multiple locations in the garden it just gives me so much more effect in the spring. In the springtime when they shoot up, all those ones are all the same variety. They all shoot up at the same time, and they're all that color, whatever that color is of your choice, and it's just a fabulous show. It does a much nicer effect. And so, again, keep adding the same ones, and then maybe each year, what I used to say years ago was just every year you pick a color that you like and just go big on the one color. The next year, pick a different color, and early, mid, or late season. But taking pictures, keeping that in the file, and writing notes, that's the way to go. That really helps you make your choices when it comes to bulbs. All right, so we're going to take a short break here. We do have another couple callers on the line, so please hang on. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back right after these messages with more AM 1150 Garden Show. All righty, welcome back to the show. We're going straight to the phone lines. Hello, Joan, are you still there?
I am, and I'm... Good morning, and I just want to know what to do with geraniums for winter. These are big plants that have been in pots, and one is still in bloom. The other two don't have any blooms left. But
right. Well,
I'm going to put them in a garage that is not heated. But
okay. Well, that sounds good, especially for tonight, because this is going to be the night the cold snap, and this is a killing frost tonight. So let's get them in, get them protected. Even in unheated garage, the geraniums, they shouldn't really freeze too much. They can go right down to like 0 degrees, but that's about it for them. So just be aware, what is the minimum temperature in there. And tonight is one of the nights where it's going to drop down. So just remember to keep them on the dry side. I just like to keep them right in their pots, like rather than, say, taking them out of their pots. Doesn't make too much sense because then you have to put them in some soil to protect the roots for the winter. So they're already in soil, they're already in pots. I just like to do that. But I like to keep them a bit on the dry side. So that's the only thing. Would you say that yours are particularly moist right now, or are they drying out a bit?
Well, the one with blooms seems to be, because of the coolness now, they're not needing water near as much.
Right. Yeah, so there you go. Well, that's okay. So bring them in, and I would just keep them happy and healthy. Like I wouldn't cut them back or anything until they start to dry out a bit. So if you do have a little bit of light, do you have light in the garage there a little bit?
Not really. Well, there is a window, but it won't be a bunch of light. But it's got a fireplace or a stove right next to the wall on the inside, so
okay. All right. Well,
it'll be warmer than real cold.
Yeah. Well, they should be fine. They're such a durable plant. I would just say that the goal is to just try to let them naturally dry out a bit before we call them sort of dormant. And so how they're going to do that is by leaving any green leaves on them and not cutting them back much. You can remove any dead leaves because those can go moldy now. So we want to keep the plants clean looking. But a little bit of light is helpful because that keeps the juices flowing. A little bit warmer at night and whatnot will help them use up that water. So if you have a pot full of just soil and it's wet and you set it out, it'll sit there wet all winter. It won't ever dry out. It takes a long time to dry out. But as soon as we put a plant in it, the plant takes the water out of the soil. So that's what we want to do here is let the plant dry itself out. And just let it go dry. And then once the soil starts to dry out, then if you'd like to cut it back a bit more, definitely remove the flowers because the flowers will be also something that goes moldy. And then at that point, once they're dried out, you can, let's say you don't have to be as picky about them. You can just kind of put them under a cupboard or just about anywhere where it's cool.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
All righty.
Good. Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. I hope that's helpful. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah. Bye-bye. All right. We have other callers on the line here. We have Joan, or that was Joan. We have Maureen on the line. Good morning, Maureen.
Good morning. I had to take my dog for a walk, so you may have already answered the question that I have. We have boxwood that is just in front of our front porch, and we did not get around to pruning it. this year. And so it's looking beautiful, big and bushy, but we would kind of like to prune it back, and I don't know if it's too late.
Boxwood are kind of, they're quite flexible on the pruning part. I imagine right now, did it get a bunch of snow on it now, or is it protected?
No, it didn't get just the outside edge, because it's actually quite protected.
Okay, so the key thing with this now is to get the snow underneath the plant so that it can melt into the earth and protect the roots.
Right.
The top part is fine as is. The only thing I would say is that now that we're getting closer to winter, is that the plant would rather you just leave it for the majority of the winter without trimming it much now, even though you could if you wanted to. A lot of people do, and it could be trimmed. But the plant would rather just stay as is right through the winter until we get into like March or even end of February, and then do the trimming at that point.
Okay.
And that would make a big difference to that plant and help it get through the winter, because when we cut, we open up little wounds that go into the winter.
That's what I was thinking. I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt it, right?
Exactly.
But I was also worried because we're worried that a bunch of snow will land on the outside edge of it and break the branches off.
Yes,
so
and
we're
it
thinking
will.
we might trim it there, but...
Well, what you can do with that is I use a black twine. Like I buy black twine, I buy it bulk, but you can sometimes get it at a hardware store, and you just sort of gently tie a bit around the base of the plant somewhere down low, and then you sort of spiral it up around the plant, wrapping the plant up to the top, and then once you get about probably 3/4 of the way up, then you can just turn it down and tie it back in onto the plant.
Perfect.
And it helps to hold the plant nice, neat, and tidy.
All right. Well, we will do that.
Yeah.
May I ask another, just two very, very quick questions?
Sure.
I noticed before this big snow came that I saw a bunch of nasturtium seeds on the ground that had fallen out of my nasturtiums.
Right.
And I don't know if they look kind of green. I don't know if I can plant those next year or not.
I would say that it's definitely that they're probably still fine, even though it got a little cold there last night. But I'm sure they're fine. Just collect them up, and I would like if they sat out over this week, over tonight, they would probably freeze, and they might freeze too cold. But for sure, you can gather those up. They will come back, and out of other different types of plants, nasturtiums tend to come back pretty close, true to seed color. So whatever it was, if it was an orange one, it would probably come back orange. So yeah.
Okay, good. And then my other quick one is I had to pick a whole bunch of green tomatoes just last week. And there's a special tomato that I really, really want to keep. And I'm going to try and turn these red by wrapping them in newspaper. But this tomato that I love is a heritage tomato. And the person that gave it to me has just passed away. So I'm really attached to this tomato. And I'm wondering, can I collect the seeds and try to grow that?
Absolutely, yeah. And tomatoes do ripen quite commonly after they're picked. So they don't actually have to be all individually wrapped. You can just put them in a tray or a cardboard box. The key is when you bring them in, you wash them. Just wash them in a sink so they're nice and clean. Then you set them out on newspaper to dry, and then you can just set them in a tray or in a cardboard box, just so that they're all sort of one single layer.
Okay, and so don't stack them up, put them in a single layer. Okay.
Yeah, and that's so that you keep air movement around them so they don't go moldy or rotten or anything.
Oh, good.
And if you do spot one that starts to go, get rid of it right away.
Rid of it. Okay.
And then you'll see them color.
In the ice-cold garage or in the house?
Nice and warm in the house.
Okay.
You bet.
Good to know.
There you go.
Okay, well, thank you very much. To get the seeds out of that tomato, do I just cut it in half, scrape out the seeds, dry them out, and hope that I can plant them in the winter?
Let it ripen. Let them ripen first. Okay. So mark it, tag the one you want, and maybe take two different tomatoes from that same group so that you make sure you get a little bit of variety. Okay. And then let those come to full ripeness as long as you can wait. And then when they're just literally almost mushy, then you cut them up and take the seeds.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your help today.
Okay. No problem. Thank you for calling.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. And then we have Mary on the line. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you suggest putting peat moss around my tea roses today?
It is actually almost cold enough to cause them damage. I would just say that if we have snow, I would put the snow on them. I would wait till a little later this afternoon. The temperature's supposed to go below freezing. So probably by about 4 o'clock or so, it'll be freezing, and then that's a time when the snow will become more. Let's say it'll be chunky, but you'll be able to work with it a bit better. And then you can put it on top and just bury the plant in that snow, and that'll protect it through tonight and the next few days. And then normally what we do is we wait until around the end of October, so we're pretty close, but we just don't want to jump into anything today because we're too close to this cold snap. After the cold snap, then what I would do is I would get some sort of a loose material. I prefer to use a mulch product rather than peat moss because the peat moss is so fine that it tends to dry out in the winter and blow away. And so I would rather use a nice chunky product like actual compost. There's products like the Nature's Gold product, the Grow product is really nice. Any of these composty products, and they've got actually chunks, so they have air in them. And then you bury them up a good over 12 inches deep. You have to be up to that 16-inch level to give it a nice mound. And if it's chunky, it also holds together and it doesn't shrink very much. And then you've got really good insulation because you've got a chunky product, and it'll last right through the winter. And then in the spring, all you do is spread it out a bit, and you're good to go.
Good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay, and we've got Patty on the line. Good morning, Patty.
Good morning, Ken. It's Addie.
Oh, Addie, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Good.
I'm just wondering, I left my bromantria outside last night, and I have already taken cuttings from it.
Yep.
But the mother plant, which is about 5 years old, and it's definitely root bound, very root bound.
Mm-hmm.
Should I just leave it die, or should I still attempt to, because every year I've kept them over to the next spring, and they've worked out. But this year, the mother plant did not bloom as well as the new cuttings. So what should I do with that mother plant?
Well, I would suggest that, it will die for sure tonight because it's going to be really cold tonight. So,
well, I'm going to bring it in.
You could bring it
into the house.
Yeah, I would suggest maybe.
The roots haven't been damaged, have they? Like last night, the roots wouldn't have been damaged.
Yeah, they should be all right. But the key with that, though, is I'd probably try giving it away to somebody who's a gardener who really would love to have that plant. And then what I would do in the future, and I have 3 of them that are doing exactly what yours is doing. So they're not performing as well, but they are getting bigger. So what I'm going to do, mine are really root bound, so I'm going to keep mine through the winter, and then when I get close to spring, I'm going to lay them down on the ground, and I'm going to rip those roots all apart. I'm going to get in there with a hammer, with the claw of the hammer, and I'm just going to rip the roots and open it right up and get rid of all the old soil, and then I'm going to replant them. And that's going to rejuvenate those, and I'm going to put them into a little bit bigger pot. And I'm going to feed the heck out of them, and you watch, those things will just explode. So it'll be awesome.
So when I'm doing that, I don't divide them at all. I just knock off most of the old dirt. Or top off most of the old dirt.
Yeah, get rid of a bunch of roots that are not useful.
That sounds like a good idea. Well, I mean, why not? But the thing is, the ones that I did take cuttings from, probably the end of August, maybe into September, it's now growing in the pot, but all the leaves are turning yellow, and they're in the house. They're turning yellow and falling off.
Yeah, they're still trying to go dormant, and that's okay. Just remember that when they do, they like lots of water typically through the regular season, but now they need to start drying out a bit. So you definitely want to.
The leaves can just fall off, and there's just a stalk left there, and that'll be okay?
Yep, you bet. They'll be fine.
Okay, One other question. I didn't have a chance to mulch my roses. Can I do it when the temperature goes?
For sure.
Goes nice.
Yeah, I would like if I had especially tea roses, that sort of thing that are a little bit more touchy. I would just mound them up with some snow tonight, just to get them through tonight, and then next week I would get the nice Grow product or Nature's Gold or something, and nice chunky mulch compost and bury them up. Next week sometime is fine.
Super. Thank you very much, Ken. Really enjoy your show.
Yeah, thanks, Addie. Bye-bye. Take care. Yeah, bye-bye. All righty, there you go. So we're going to take a short break here. So we might have time for one more call after the break. So stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages with more AM 1150 Garden Show. Alrighty, welcome back to the show. Ken Salvail here today. Remember to check Grower Coach on YouTube and subscribe to the videos and like as many as you can. It's just great. We really appreciate that. It helps us out, helps us get on track. And YouTube is a great source for information, and we're developing new videos all the time. All right, we're going back to the phone lines. We have Vicki on the line. Good morning, Vicki.
Good morning. I really love your show, fellows.
Oh, thank you.
I have a question. I have some purple and some green sweet potato vine, I think they call them, because they grow over, out in pots. And I was going to pull those pots apart today. And if there's any little potatoes in there, are they edible or not?
Excellent question. They are actually edible. And they're actually quite tasty. Some of them get to be quite large. And in the past, we always used to go through the planters at the end of the season. We'd find the big ones, bring them in, and we just cook them up. They don't last very long, so they're best kept fresh. And they're really tasty. So I really like. It's nothing like a fresh sweet potato. And
So do you peel them like the ones you buy in the store, or are they okay to just eat, like cook the way they are?
They can be cooked a number of ways, but they're not very thick-skinned. They're very thin-skinned.
Right.
So you can just boil them, and they're fine. You can microwave them. I would try them a few different ways and see what you think, because they are slightly different than the ones that you buy. Just the way they prepare, they're just different. Yeah. So I would give them a try for sure. And if you want to keep some small ones, you could grow them in pots over the winter. Because just like regular sweet potatoes, they'll just root and grow. So you can grow them as a house plant. And then also the cuttings that come off the top, those are also very easy to root. So you can just take little tip cuttings about 4 inches long, and you can pop those you can actually plant them straight into potting soil, and you spritz them with a bit of moisture, and then they'll just root right into those pots, and away they go, and you've got new plants for next year.
So I don't need any rooting hormone to dip them into,
No, they're pretty good. They just need some warmth. Sweet potatoes love the heat. That's why they do so well in containers, is because they're up they're in the air in a container, and they just love it, the extra warm soil. So when you bring them in and you've got a nice warm house, they should be quite happy.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Good. Well, thanks very much. I will try them.
You're welcome. Well, thanks so much for calling in.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Yeah, and so just with that in mind is just a little bit of humidity. Sometimes we'll even take a little plastic bag and put it over top of cuttings. So if you put them in a pot, and you could take like a little baggie or a little clear, even a bread bag, and just set it over top. You always want to let air in, but that creates like a little mini greenhouse, and it's really good for rooting cuttings, generally just the first week or two, and then they're good to go. They still need light, most important. In the house, we have warmth, we have moisture, we have food, we have soil. The only thing that's the limiting factor is light. So because we're in Canada, the temperatures out there are definitely changing, and that means that the days are getting shorter and the light quality is dropping. So you got to move your plants right up close to the windows where they can get that light, and they'll be super happy, and they'll get through this winter and be ready to go for spring. All right, so on that note, we are going to take a long break here till next week, but I definitely want to repeat my tips and plants for the week, and so that's what I'm going to do. So, all right, so there we go. The tip of the week this week is really just all about the plants in our gardens, and that, we need to protect them a little bit. So we've been talking about that today and burying up some plants that need that extra protection. But ultimately, my main tip was to shut off the water so that the outside, anywhere there's any outside irrigation or anything, it's going to freeze tonight hard enough to break the pipes. So shut the water off on the inside of the house, and if you have to, protect it. Put some insulation over the outside parts. You can even use a bit of heat tape if you needed to just keep it from freezing. Just 1 or 2 nights, that's all you'll need. My plant of the week this week was the ice plant, because I was thinking it's cold. So, hey, what the heck? Ice plant. So 2 groups, the mesbryanthemums, which are the annual house ice plants, And then the Delospermas, which are the group that are perennial ice plants that actually survive the winters here. The reason they're called ice plants is because if you look up close, like you have to look fairly close, and the little cells on the sides of the leaves look crystalline, and they sparkle in the sunshine sometimes. So that's how they got the name ice plant. But who knows? They're just ice plants. All right, that's my tips and plants for this week. Remember to check growercoach.com. Also, check the YouTube channel for Grower Coach and subscribe to our videos there, and you'll get some updates, and we're going to be on that a lot more here in the future. So, all right, thanks again for tuning in this week. It's been a fun show. It always is. We'll be back again next week as usual, and we'll be taking your calls and answering your questions. So, on that note, we'll see you again next week with more AM 1150 Garden Show.